Hello guys, we are going to talk a drama film called Heidi from 2015. A lot of interesting things are waiting for you. Heidi is a young girl without parents who was raised by her Aunt Date, but it seems that taking care of the child has become a burden for her, and she decided to take her niece to her grandfather, Alpohi. There were various rumors about this man, that he was so wild that he had even forgotten how to speak, and he would definitely not be happy to have another person at the table. The girl felt hot, so she took off her dress to run with the animals in her shirt. Heidi stopped in front of her grandfather, who was busy chopping wood. Deet said that she had found a job in the city and could not take the girl with her. The grandfather was against it, but the woman did go away, leaving the girl at home, assuring her that the old man would not do anything bad to her. Now Heidi didn't know what to do, and realized that no one needed her. Alpohi locked himself in the house, leaving his granddaughter on the street. She had no choice but to go to the barn. She spent the night there next to the goat. In the morning, the grandfather silently went into the barn, brought some milk, and gave it to his granddaughter to drink. He was going to take her to the pastor to decide what to do with her. The pastor examined Heidi, looked at her teeth, and concluded that she was healthy, so there would be no problems with her. Alpohi was not going to keep the girl anyway. Perhaps some farmer would be interested in her. However, the pastor would be leaving for the city in 3 days, so Heidi would have to stay with her grandfather for the time being. The grandfather allowed her to stay in the house, even though there was only one chair and one bed inside. The girl was not upset. She was even happy to have a hayloft. The next morning, she met a young shepherd named Peter, and they went to herd goats together. Heidi said that she liked it much better here than in the village because she and her aunt stayed at home all day. While the girl was running around the meadow, Peter sneaked a bite of the sausage and cheese that his grandfather had packed for Heidi. The two horned animals got into a fight, and Peter started beating them. Heidi offered to give him half of her food if he stopped hitting the goats. Later, Peter told the girl that there were rumors that her grandfather had killed someone. Heidi decided that it was safer for her to sleep in the barn. Alpohi guessed what Peter was talking about today, but he called the rumor a dirty lie. He advised his granddaughter not to believe them. The girl hugged her grandfather and ran to the attic. The next day, Alpohi took out his tools and began to make something. Heidi told Peter that tomorrow her grandfather would take her to the pastor, but when she returned, she saw the second bed that her grandfather had made for her. The happy girl realized that she could stay here and continue to have fun with Peter. However, summer was over, and Peter would no longer be herding goats until next spring, when he would be going to school. Heidi came to the village with her grandfather. Everyone looked at Alpohi with suspicion and displeasure. They met the pastor again, who insisted that the girl go to school and learn to read. This was what Heidi wanted, but her grandfather had different views on life. The child was bored and waited for spring to come and her friend Peter to return. To cheer up his granddaughter, Alpohi took her sledding and brought her to Peter's house. While the boy was at school, Heidi met his mother and blind grandmother. Eventually, Peter came along. The family lived very poorly, eating boiled potatoes and stale bread. In the spring, Dete unexpectedly returned to the village. She told Alpohi that she had found a place for Heidi in the house of a rich family. She would be enrolled in school with the family's daughter. But this time, Alpohi did not want to let his granddaughter go. Deet assured Heidi that a big and beautiful house was waiting for her in the city. The rich parents wanted their daughter to have a friend. Heidi wanted to stay with her grandfather. Then Dede said that her grandfather also wanted her to leave, and did not even let her say goodbye to Peter. The old man realized that he had been deceived. He wanted to stop his niece in time, but she had already left the village. The townspeople laughed at Alpohi, and he could hardly hold back his tears. Heidi looked sadly at her favorite alpine mountains. Soon the girl found herself in bustling Frankfurt. Her aunt brought her to the Sesemann mansion, a huge house full of servants. At first, Heidi met the governess, a strict woman who decided that the girl was too young and that her name was not very Christian. However, her aunt assured her that Heidi was exactly what the owner wanted, an unspoiled girl from the countryside. The aunt was in a hurry to get her payment because she had actually sold her niece. Heidi met a girl named Clara who was unable to walk and was confined to a wheelchair. Heidi started rolling Clara around the room and accidentally broke a vase. Clara lied and said it was her fault. During lunch, Heidi started to eat soup directly from the plate because she did not know how to use cutlery. She hid one of the buns in her pocket. The governess explained the day's schedule and the lessons with the teacher, but Heidi was already asleep and did not hear anything. The next morning, the maid washed Heidi with a stiff brush and dressed her in a beautiful dress. Clara helped her settle in, showing her how to use the cutlery. But Heidi's reading skills were very poor. She didn't even know her letters. This angered the teacher and the governess, who said that such an uneducated creature had no place in their home. Clara showed Heidi her mother's room, where there was a picture of her and her mother together. Clara told Heidi that she had fallen ill after her mother's death. Her father travels constantly for work, and she is forever stuck in this house. During a quiet hour, Heidi asked the servant Sebastian to open the window. She was hoping to see the mountains, but they were too far away. Restless Heidi decided to take Clara for a ride through the streets of the city and at the same time climb the tower where she could see the mountains, but she left Clara in the middle of the market square. The governess discovered the girls were missing and began to panic. Even after climbing the tower, Heidi could not see the mountains. At the same time, Clara was offered to buy a kitten for a couple of pennies, but she couldn't resist and bought all the kittens. Sebastian finally found the girls. At the manor, the governess lectured them, but suddenly began to sneeze incessantly. It turned out that she was allergic to cats. In a panic, she demanded that the animals be removed, but Sebastian promised to take care of them. As a punishment, the governess left Heidi without dinner and put her in the corner. She even threatened to lock the girl in a closet with rats. Heidi managed to gather a lot of buns. She put on other clothes and was about to leave the house, but the governess stopped her. The girl explained that she was collecting the buns for her toothless grandmother, who could not chew stale bread. Clara burst into tears because she was afraid of losing her friend. She locked herself in her room and felt sick. Heidi decided to support her friend. They could have a great time together, but learning was very difficult for Heidi. She could not learn her letters. One day, Mr. Sesemann came to the estate with his mother. The woman, who was much gentler than the governess, asked Heidi to call her grandmother. Her father noted that Clara was happier with her new friend, but the governess insisted that Heidi was not herself. She did not know her letters, interfered with Clara's studies, and behaved wildly. Grandma decided to check it herself. She resorted to a trick. She did not read Heidi a fairy tale before bedtime and offered to find out the sequel herself if the girl could read. The countess told her son that Heidi was a sweet girl who would learn to read if she was interested. But living in this house is hard for her because she is unhappy. However, this did not matter to Mr. Sesemann, as long as Clara was happy. When the maid was stealing the master's wine at night, she heard strange sounds. Together with the governess, they decided it was a ghost. Sebastian discovered that the front door was open. But who had opened it? All the servants believed that something supernatural was involved. Heidi did indeed learn to read quickly, which brought joy to the teacher and the Sesemann family. The father promised Clara that Heidi would stay with them forever. Upon hearing this, Heidi burst into tears at night. Soon after, her grandmother left the estate, and the governess became the main educator again. One night, the doctor heard strange noises. Together with Sebastian, they took pistols to repel the attack of an intruder. But it turned out that it was Heidi. She sleepwalks and goes out into the yard to look into the distance, probably towards the mountains. Sesemann found another pile of buns. When Heidi woke up, she told him that she had dreamt of her grandfather, and she burst into tears. The doctor realized that the girl was depressed because she was homesick and homesick for the Alps. The next day, Sesemann had to tell his daughter about it. Clara did not agree because she was also sick and lonely. She yelled at her friend and told her to get out. Today, Heidi was to be taken home to her grandfather. She wanted to talk to Clara, but the upset girl wouldn't open the door. A whole basket of buns was collected for Heidi. She asked to give Clara a wooden figurine that her grandfather had carved for her. Sebastian took Heidi to her home village. The locals were amazed at the girl's rich wardrobe. Then Peter came up to his friend. Finally, Heidi gave buns that the boy's toothless grandmother could eat, and Peter received sausages as a gift. The Alpine grandfather heard his beloved granddaughter calling him and ran to meet her. The old man was extremely happy to see her back, just as Heidi was happy to return to her normal life in the mountains. She drinks milk, herds goats, eats simple food, and walks with Peter. Heidi writes letters to Clara. In the winter, she and her grandfather moved to the village so she could go to school. The pastor asked the students what they wanted to be when they grew up. Some answered, a shepherd or a farmer. Heidi said she wanted to write stories, which made the children laugh. Heidi has tutoring with Peter after school, but he is having a hard time learning. The girl misses her friend very much, and Clara now regrets not saying goodbye to Heidi. Clara's grandmother did the unthinkable. She brought her granddaughter to visit Heidi on her own. The Alpine grandfather treated the noble guest to moonshine and agreed to let Clara stay with them for a few days. Heidi introduced her friend to the goats and Peter, who had been shy for a long time. However, he is jealous because Heidi no longer goes to the pasture with him. Now Heidi is teaching Clara about village etiquette at the table. Peter, out of jealousy, decided to do some harm and pushed Clara's wheelchair off a cliff where it broke. Clara was upset because now she would have to sit still all day. The Alpine grandfather realized that it was Peter's fault. He carried the sick girl on his shoulders to the pasture. The old man told Peter to take care of the girls and left. The boy was still angry, and Heidi went to pick berries. Clara was left alone. A butterfly landed on her leg and flew away. The girl did not notice how she suddenly got to her feet and almost followed the butterfly. With the support of Heidi and Peter, she managed to take a few steps. The next day, she was able to do it on her own. Sesemann came to the mountains to pick up his daughter. He was furious that her grandmother had brought Clara without his permission, but the man was speechless when he saw his daughter walking towards him without any help. It was just incredible. Her grandmother gave Heidi a book, but no words. She had to fill in the pages herself. It didn't matter that the local children were laughing at her desire to write stories. They have seen nothing but this village, and she has seen the world. If something brings you joy, you have to do it. The friends said goodbye, and Clara went back to her city, and Heidi returned to her goats, Peter, and her usual life in the Alps, in freedom.